Crimes like robberies, killings, and illegal gambling could send anyone to prison for many years. Yet some people ended up being glorified in pop culture. Instead of punishment, their legacy inspired an entire Peaky Blinders series and gained millions of devoted fans across modern social media platforms. People unfamiliar with Cillian Murphy have seen clips of his character lighting a cigarette or taking down enemies to intense, epic music. Thomas Shelby became a fashion icon, known for his three-piece suits, long coats, and distinct 8-panel caps. The Peaky Blinders hype continues as audiences are drawn to lone wolves, strong, quiet men who reject corrupt society. The show became so popular that the BBC stretched historical accuracy to keep the infamous gang alive on screen longer. Cillian Murphy, previously rarely cast in large roles, suddenly became one of the most recognizable actors worldwide. But today's story isn't about the show's popularity. It's about the real British gangsters behind the legend. We discovered the true Peaky Blinders, whose real lives were drastically different from the fictional Shelby family. The Shelby family never existed. The real figures were completely different people with far more brutal stories. What these men did in reality is something no scriptwriter could ever dream up, even in the darkest fiction. Even if you've watched the entire series, you'll learn much more about that period in the street gangs of Britain. The England they lived in had nothing to do with political intrigue. It was a harsh fight for survival. Today I'll explain who caused the rise of the Peaky Blinders, how their story was changed, and where the gypsies came from. George Eastwood, a young man, was viciously attacked after arriving at the Rainbow Pub for a simple bottle of ginger beer. Minutes later, several men known as the Peaky Blinders walked in. Eastwood recognized their faces immediately. This was recorded in a Birmingham newspaper dated March 24, 1890, the first time locals saw the Peaky Blinders mentioned in print. Eastwood was later found with a fractured skull, though he somehow survived the brutal attack. But the city had already known about the gang before that article appeared. The district of Small Heath, home to many gang members, suffered especially badly, becoming one of the roughest areas in the entire city. Even today, the area looks worn down, but at the end of the 19th century, it was practically a dumping ground for the city's poorest residents. And where there is deep poverty, crime quickly follows. This is how social ghettos function everywhere in the world. The criminals didn't just attack people in pubs. Daily life in those streets brought constant danger from every direction. Imagine being an ordinary worker who must walk from home to the factory, then to the pub, and finally back home through cramped and filthy streets. Every route meant passing dark corners where danger might be hiding, and survival depended entirely on luck. Not everyone in Birmingham was an honest laborer. Many preferred theft and robbery over the exhausting conditions of factory work. The chance of encountering a criminal in such neighborhoods was extremely high, even if you were simply passing through. And if you were a police officer, moving through these areas meant you were taking an even greater risk. Thomas Walters, a real member of the Peaky Blinders, was sentenced to 5 years for stabbing a constable who tried to escort him out of a theater. A person could get stabbed for no reason at all, sometimes simply for wearing a tall police helmet. This violent reality hardly matches the image of organized mafia shown by the BBC, with charismatic leaders firing guns in dramatic scenes. People expect sharp plot twists and family drama, but the real story contains a twist far more surprising than anything on screen. Before understanding the twist, we need to explore who the Peaky Blinders actually were and how their world functioned. In 19th century England, gang affiliation wasn't based on ethnicity, but on the exact street where you were born and raised. Your birthplace determined your allegiance, your friends became your defenders, and rival streets turned into enemies. These weren't harmless scuffles. They were brutal street battles with serious and often deadly consequences. Birmingham grew rapidly. Its population multiplied by 10 in the 19th century, but the city itself barely expanded. The result was extreme overcrowding, with aggressive youth concentrated in tight spaces, constantly defending their territory. Industrial production also contributed, providing metal goods like heavy belt buckles that gangs turned into weapons. Knives were common as well, and cobblestones, lying everywhere, became makeshift projectiles in gang clashes. These vicious territorial fights were exactly what the youths, who became known as the Peaky Blinders, excelled at. Their reputation grew because they were far more skilled and ruthless than the average street gang. As for their name, the idea of razor blades sewn into caps is purely a fictional detail invented by the show's creators. In reality, the gang's weapon choice had nothing to do with cap blades and everything to do with accessible, brutal tools of the streets. The myth of the razor-filled cap only strengthened the legend, making the gangs seem more theatrical than they truly were. But their real story is far more grounded, shaped by poverty, overcrowding, and the violence that ruled Birmingham's streets. Understanding these real conditions gives a clearer picture of how such extreme territorial gangs emerged. The truth behind the Peaky Blinders is not glamorous. It is a story of survival, brutality, and the harsh environment that formed them.